Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. The Be Fulfilled Journal helps you be more honest with yourself and with others and be more open to handling things you've avoided dealing with for years. It's a 12-week online and journal program that helps you identify and eliminate things you do that are causing you stress and live in more gratitude and joy. It was actually developed by a long-term friend of mine who got sober in 2008, and he's put together a great deal just for my listeners. You get the 300-page hardcover journal and access to the 12-week video program online, plus free shipping, plus membership in a private Facebook support group with others going through the program, plus a 5-day mini course showing you how to let go of stuff that's draining your energy, plus a 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. To start your journey and get all the bonuses, go to BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. That's BeFulfilledJournal.com/ELG. For information about advertising on Everyone Loves Guitar, including information on geographically targeted ads, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And I have, this man needs no introduction, the one and only Steve Vai. And before we get started, I just want to say thanks very much to Joe Satriani and Mike Keneally for connecting us. Steve, thanks so much for coming on the show.
You got it. My pleasure. Thank you.
Another one of my New York homies, too.
Yeah.
Man, so from everything I've read about you, and which I don't know which is true and which is not, as you know, right? It seems. True. What's that?
It's all true.
It's all true. Yes. It seems like you've always been really super intuitive, like clued into your environment around you, and had a pretty good level of self-awareness about yourself, even at a young age. And if that's true, I was curious where you thought that came from. Did you have any role models for that? And did something ever occur that sort of validated that? In other words, that this sixth sense or this intuition or the decisions you are making about certain things, specifically musically, was that validated to sort of like give you a pat on the back that, hey, man, just keep doing this. You're all right. You're on the right path.
Well, I think I understand what you mean, but I don't assume to possess any extra sixth sense that anybody else doesn't have. But when I look back at my career and I try to point to at least, the one thing that's been so helpful throughout my entire career, I've been able to identify it. And it may not be a very satisfying answer, but the truth is, I just love music. I just love the idea of playing the guitar. The guitar was always this beautiful kind of expressive tool, and it was like my own little secret. And the one thing, regardless of what was going on in my life throughout my entire life, the challenges, the joys, the wins, the whatever any of that stuff was, there was always a sacred spot that I would go to, and many people go to it, in the creative dimension, so to speak, where I'm holding an instrument and I'm playing and I imagine something. And the imagining of something doesn't have anything to do with expectations of the world or expectations of myself or future success or any of these things. It's just the pure creative moment, the in the moment creative impulse that arises, and then it comes through you, and that's always been it. That I can tell when I'm pushing my own button, so to speak. I can tell when I get an inspiring thought, and I'm sifting through the contrast, so to speak, and creating it. Because when it's done and I experience it, that's an incredible payoff. That's what I love most of all. So that's not a sixth sense, so to speak. It's more or less following your bliss without any excuses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the thing, that any time a person enters their creative zone, that's at their disposal. And the only thing that ever obscures it is the thoughts in their own mind about their own unworthiness.
Okay, I understand totally. So what you're saying is for you, from your perspective, you just followed your bliss. That your decision making was limited, or yeah,
simple as this. I followed exciting ideas.
Right.
That's really it. I mean, I know it's a very satisfying answer.
No. It's the truth. That's a satisfying answer.
In that, there's incredible power.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Did you know there was incredible power in that beforehand or as you were doing it?
No, I just enjoyed the process and things just happened.
How did you have the confidence to do that? Sorry, I'm not trying to, I'm trying to learn, please. To be honest with you. I'm not trying to
You're asking really great questions. And I think that this is a good conversation. What was the question? But it's short.
How did you have the confidence to do that?
I didn't, because it was more than confidence. To have confidence means you need to believe that you can do something. And I didn't have any need to believe I can do it. I just did it.
Yeah. Okay. So it was like a compulsion. Almost.
Yeah, it was just a simple, easy, like the easiest thing I can do in my life. If I had to go run a marathon, I would have to build up a lot of confidence.
Right. Okay.
I mean, because the training and it takes. It's hard to explain what it feels like to be beyond confidence. It sounds arrogant.
No. You're not saying it. It doesn't sound not how you're saying it. It's not. Doesn't sound arrogant at all.
It's an innocent simplicity where you see something and you go, oh yeah. You see something in your head, or you see an idea, or you get with a bunch of people and you're being creative, and all of a sudden you go, yeah, and there's a feeling that arises in you, and it feels like enthusiasm for a good idea. That's it. That's the end. Then you just go with it. We have a tendency to complicate these things with the how. And once you start embroiling yourself in the impossible task of trying to figure out how you're going to do it all right now, that has a tendency to take away from the enthusiasm of the idea. But when you hold on to the enthusiasm of the idea, the how reveals itself at the time that it's necessary for the operative components that you need to be presented to you. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like if somebody, say a young musician, decides, okay, I know, I want to make a record. I'm going to make a CD. I want my music to be out there. I have a lot of great ideas. How am I going to record all this though? How am I going to release it? I don't know anything about the music business. How on earth are people going to hear it? How am I going to market it? Why do I think that I could blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. The little voice on your friggin' shoulder.
Yeah. You don't have coping mechanisms to deal with that kind of an expectation. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do know what you mean.
100%. For someone like myself, I don't have any question as to the how, because in this particular field, making a CD, it's relatively as simple for me as going into the kitchen and making lunch. You know what I mean? Of course, it's longer, but I don't stand at the door of the kitchen and go, "Oh my God, how am I going to find the pan? And what if there's not enough food?"
Yeah.
This is what people do to something that can be as simple as the things you do in your life that you don't have to give any fear to.
It's funny. I think when you do stuff new, it always turns out to be in some ways much simpler than you had it in your head, and in some ways much harder. The things that you thought would be obstacles are not obstacles. The things you never anticipated, it's like, holy shit, how do you deal with this? But I think what you said was really important. How you do something comes to you at that time when you need it to.
And you need it.
Yeah.
If you keep your sense of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then you will not see the cooperative component when it presents itself to you. And this is why a lot of people wallow in, non-creative lives.
Yeah.
They're too afraid.
Yeah. Or they get like analysis paralysis kind of thing where I got to read one more book and I got to take one more info product course or something.
Yeah. And sometimes educating yourself is part of the path, but in a sense in the feeling of excitement and enthusiasm for your idea, it's not a chore, it's a joy.
Yeah.
Challenges, when you hold on to that state of simplicity and joy, your challenges become opportunities. Because then you'll see them as such, and you'll see the opportunities, you'll see the necessity for your challenges, because they absolutely are necessary, because from them comes solutions. How can you do anything without a challenge? It's just that we get caught in the challenge and we don't see what's on the other side of it, because within any challenge is an answer. Just because okay, this is what I don't want. What is this telling me that I want? But if you're caught in if you're caught in the fear of how or unworthiness, the how is completely off your radar, although it's still there.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? I know.
No, it's totally. Yeah. Let's start with a simple question, right?
Before you interview me, there are no simple questions.
Thanks. That was a great answer, man. I got a lot out of that, actually. You started working with Frank Zappa when you were around 20. And again, you're going to deny it, but I got to believe you're way more mature and focused than the average 20-year-old because of this enthusiasm and passion and love for music and guitar you had. That being said, you were still 20-year-old coping skills. And I was wondering, what were the most overwhelming non-musical aspects of working with Frank? And also, what were the most important life lessons you took away from that experience with him?
Well, being in the same room with Frank was overwhelming for me. I actually started working for him when I was 18.
Oh, wow.
And I was transcribing music. He wanted to try me out for the band, but when I told him I was 18, he said, forget it. So when I was 20, the day after my 20th birthday, I moved to California, right down the street from where he lived, and just started going up to the house. And it's funny because in my time with Frank, like you were saying in the beginning before we were on the air, it's weird sometimes to meet your heroes. People that you read about and you listen to their work or whatever, and you have posters or whatever, and then all of a sudden there they are.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird,
Yeah.
And I know that feeling, and I know some people have that feeling around me, and I had that around Frank.
Yeah,
because I was so enamored with him. You know what I mean? But I hit it relatively well. But being with Frank was like there was something very magical about it. Just him, his personality, his sense of humor, his wit, his confidence. His creativity. It was all just amazing. It was really amazing, and I got to bear witness to it. And talking to Frank was a trip because he was very focused. Like when you were talking to Frank, it's like he wasn't talking to anybody else. He had your undivided attention, and he listened really intensely, which was intimidating, because he could read your intent more than your words, because a lot of times our intentions.
That's everything, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Intention is everything, as Mike said actually on the call.
Yeah, so he had a very intuitive line right to your intention. So you got to be careful, because when you talk to him, you better be ready to hear the truth.
Yeah.
So it's a little intimidating, but he didn't play that card. Frank never played I am Frank Zappa, But when it came to the music, I was fiercely confident because I loved it, and it was the same process. When Frank would give me a very difficult piece of music to play, I just knew that if I started really slow and I worked on it perfectly and then made it faster each time and perfect, there was no way that I wasn't not going to be able to play it. And I feel that way about anybody has that intention. So my intention was bulletproof. It was just the simple thought, how can I fail if I don't quit?
Right.
So that made it easy for me in a sense. There was no real, it was a challenge, but it was fun.
Sure.
And I loved blowing Frank away.
Oh, yeah, that had to be awesome.
The payoff, it's like I might have been, staring at him in the studio going, oh my God, there's Frank Zappa, and being guarding everything I said with the fear of sounding like an idiot or something.
Sure.
That was all the time, but then when it came time to play something, I was like, okay, come on, motherfucker, watch this.
Yeah. Well, you were prepared too, I'm sure. So that gave you the permission to feel like that.
Yeah. And he allowed time to prepare, of course.
That was really cool.
It's really amazing. Frank was the most extraordinary man I ever met.
Biggest thing he taught you?
Independence. Frank, I was very young and impressionable, and Frank was an explosion of freedom. His creative intentions were number one, and he was always being creative. So he would get an idea for something, and he would explore it, and then he would manifest it without any excuses and without expecting somebody to do it for him. So this was very powerful for me, because when I entered the world after Frank, basically, or even, during Frank, my feeling was, well, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, right. That was a great lesson. Yeah.
Don't expect somebody to do it for you, and don't make excuses. If you're making excuses, then you don't really want to do it.
I like that. Frank was an explosion of freedom. That was good, man. It sounds like a song, Steve. When you made your first record, Flexible, in '84, you had been working with Frank for the last 4 years. I know you had the same work ethic. I know your standards were super high. Was it tough? Because you produced it, engineered it, you were the man, did everything. Was it tough for you to know, when is enough? Like, especially your first record, you tend to be early on, especially when you get a great work ethic, you tend to be a perfectionist. And in the studio, you could always tweak. How did you know, okay, I'm done. This song is complete?
Well, that's changed through the years. In the beginning, when I first recorded Flexible, I loved, even in high school, when I discovered what sound on sound recording was, I was enamored with the idea of recording. So I always loved engineering and producing. And I've always engineered and produced all my own records. It's just something I enjoy. And there was a huge learning curve. I can play you stuff that I recorded in the beginning. It's just a mess. So I didn't know what I was doing at all.
Yeah.
I learned everything through watching Frank. And he would teach me certain things just by his example. And he loaned me a lot of great gear to use. So when I first recorded Flexible, I had this very bombastic approach to things. Like, once you hit the record button, whatever you get, that's it.
Okay.
And I listened back to the record, and it just sounded like crap. It sounded like shit. There was no sync. There was no groove. The performances were awful, but I felt like I just wanted to get through it. this is what you do, right? And after working with Frank more and more, he wouldn't allow any of that. So it had to, in order for something to pass the inspection of being finished, there were certain check marks that had to be, boxes that needed to be checked. Does it have the feeling of music? Does it sound like music? Does it have the energy? Is it accurate? Is the sound the best it could be, or what you're looking for? A lot of it's subjective, but there's various golden rules. But ultimately, when it's done, when your instincts tell you it's done. So I scrapped the entire Flexible record and started over completely, putting my intentions on recording it appropriately. So that was a big learning curve, and it was the best thing that I had done for my engineering chops.
Okay. And the second time around, you were good with it.
Well, I was getting there. I was then after Frank, I was working with a lot of really fabulous producers and engineers, and I would just keep my eyes open and ask a lot of questions and use my ears and compare what I was doing and read the magazines for the most updated technology and how it could serve me. And I loved it, though.
Yeah.
And I still do every day. When I'm done with this, I'm going in that other room and I'm engineering and recording.
You started your own label early on. You put your own studio together early on, and it seems like in general you've been like really progressive and very active in business. As a business guy, I find it's upsetting is wrong. It's unfortunate that 99% of the musicians I talk to are very detached from the business aspect of what they do. I was curious what prompted you to be so involved in the business aspect, and how did you go about learning each new thing you did? Like, did you consult with people? Did you read books, or what was your process?
Well, I think you're correct in that business brain muscles seem very different than creative brain muscles, because many artists kind of do away with the business aspect. Maybe not entirely, and some of them do embrace it. I've always liked business. I don't know. I've always felt I enjoyed the responsibility of taking care of myself and anybody I was responsible for taking care of. And there was a couple simple things that I learned early on that can serve a musician really well. One of them is just don't live above your means. Always live a little bit below your means. So when I was giving guitar lessons and charging, maybe I was making $200 a week, I realized, okay, I'm going to take, and I read this great book called The Richest Man in Babylon.
What's his name?
I can't remember.
Yeah, great book. Yeah.
40 years ago, yeah. And it mentioned how one way to save is to take 10% of any of the money that you have that comes in and just put it aside and don't touch it. So I did that, and I just said, okay, if I'm making 200, then I got to figure out how to live on 180. And you can do it. It's maybe not comfortable, but I didn't make it a problem. And it was fine because you always feel like you don't have that monkey on your back, because if you're making $200 a week and you're spending $210, got that monkey on your back, and that has held through, because if you're making $5,000 a week and you're spending $5,100, you just got that monkey on your back, and this holds true even if you're making millions of dollars.
Absolutely.
So I've always kind of lived below my means a little bit, and that served me really well, because that 10% through the years has turned into enough money that I could virtually live off the interest every month.
Yeah,
I don't have to work, And there was a couple other things, but the two main ingredients I believe that I had was I never panicked and I never felt desperate about money.
Because of what you did in step one, which is live below your means.
Yeah. Also, I never felt like I wanted money to rule my life. I like money, don't get me wrong, but I don't like the feeling of being taken advantage of more than I like money. No. So through the years, I've always would look at a deal, and it was the same kind of place. I would go to the same place as I go to earlier in this conversation when I was talking about finding that creative, that joyous creative space. And what that was, when I would look at a business deal, I would just say, it's like a feeling. Does this make sense? Does this? And then you're kind of off the hook of fearing what it means, And I've made some not so good decisions, but most of all, a lot of times musicians are intimidated by the business. And this is something I always talk about, because it's unnecessary to be intimidated by the business. The business is there for you, to serve you. And it does not take a lot of attention to learn some of the simple business practices that are useful for a young musician. The thing that blocks a young musician's ability to take control of their own career and their own finances is the fear of the complexity of it, and the fear that if they don't allow somebody else to do it, they're going to screw it up, or they're not going to be able to get that deal that they want. You know, like for instance, managers, you know, I've in my entire career, never once has anybody that I've ever worked with written a check to anybody but me.
Right.
Nobody that I've ever worked with has anybody else written a check for except me.
Right.
So anytime a manager, you know, if a management would say, well, you know, we'll control your finances. Nope. You know, none of that ever happened.
You start the first thing out of your mouth explains everything. You said, I enjoy the responsibility of taking care of myself.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. Nothing when you're, yeah, it's real good. Yeah. And even if you, what's that?
It's not that hard.
Well, even if you screw up, you're going to screw up. You know, everybody screws up something. But when that allows you to do a lot of things, that sole thing right there allows you to do tons of shit, man. So,
it's a perspective.
Yeah.
It's a simple perspective that somebody who doesn't have that perspective, they can acquire it. All you got to do is imagine what it would feel like to enjoy taking care of yourself and being, you know, enjoy the responsibility of owning and controlling and constructing your business the way that it's comfortable for you. That's just a brain thing.
100%.
The moment you align with that feeling, it just starts to happen.
Yeah. David Lee Roth, man, how'd you initially get the gig with David? And if you can share, like, without being gossipy, like maybe a crazy David Lee Roth story.
I bought a box of Cracker Jacks, and you know those little at the bottom? Said, you, Steve. Now, that was Billy Sheehan, man. Billy was working with Dave, and they were looking for a guitar player, and I think they were working with a couple of guys, but, you know, Billy suggested me. Mm-hmm. And once we got together, it felt like a great fit. And it was a great band. It was a band. And we had the greatest time. And Dave was, he was just amazing. You know, he was a mentor, you know, because I had all these other kinds of mentors in my life, you know, on the music front, the financial, you know, all these things. But as far as being on a big stage and learning how to communicate with a large group of people, a few people could do that as powerfully as Dave Roth back in those days. So, and many other things I learned from him. And touring with Billy and Greg and Matt and Brett, there was just the greatest of times. I mean, can you imagine being a rock star in the 80s?
No, that was a pretty wild shit.
Wild shit. I mean, it was a stunner.
Can you say any stories without getting anybody in, you know, trouble or gossip or anything like that?
Just the daily protocol was just like, you sleep as late as you want.
The daily protocol.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
Didn't have to do sound checks. Maybe we go up. Dave and I would climb a lot. We go climbing or something. Mm-hmm. Then you get to the gig. You do this amazing gig on this tremendous stage with, 15 to 25,000 people screaming, and the music was easy to play. And we get to run around like crazy rock stars and wear all sorts of crazy things and do things with our hair and just playing that part on a stage the size of a football field. The first David Lee Roth tour, the stage made it to the Guinness Book of World Record, I'm told, for having the most lights.
Wow.
So there was like 11 tractor trailers, And then of course, the entertainment value of the crew and all of their, crew slut activities was just a hoot. And then the parties after the show are just amazing. There'd be this huge room with Dave brought curtains and huge PA system. And there was like probably 50 or so young girls in their underwear
That was a normal day for David Lee Roth.
Concerts, basically, their underwear. And then the parties were just fantastic. And then we go back to the hotel, and there would be, he'd rent the whole floor. And there was a huge party there. And then we'd get on the bus and go to the next city and do it all over again.
Wow.
I don't want to get specific.
No, it's cool, man. That's what I was looking for. Where'd your work ethic come in? It's really outstanding. Did you have a role model for that, or is that just you?
I can't say. It's just I enjoy the feeling of accomplishment. And my father was a really hard worker. He worked 3 jobs. A lot of it also came from my older brother, Michael, who had an incredible work and still does have just an incredible work ethic. And I just liked working. I just liked producing and creating. And I also like taking time off and enjoying time. I'm not like a freakaholic.
So let me ask you this. Let's tie this. You said I enjoyed the responsibility of taking care. You enjoy the responsibility of taking care of yourself. The VIG, the payoff of that is what you said of this question. I enjoy the feeling of accomplishment. And I totally get that, because I'm really exactly like that. How do you, usually when people are like that, it's tough to balance. Like it's been a big challenge for me.
Well, because their expectations are insane. That they can't be happy or successful or enjoy the feeling of accomplishment unless they've changed the world, unless the whole world knows how great they are, unless what they do is wildly successful on a worldly level. All this is bullshit, because you can enjoy the sense of accomplishment after you fry your eggs. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Feeling of accomplishment is your most powerful and extraordinary tool for a fulfilling and fun life. But if your expectations are fantasy, you will never be able to enjoy that feeling of accomplishment, because you'll always be waiting for it in the future. And when you do that, no matter how much you accomplish, you're never satisfied. That's the ego. The ego never is satisfied. So you can accomplish something, and instead of enjoying the accomplishment, you're miserable because it's never enough. And I can tell you this, it is never enough for the ego, no matter what it is, whether it's sex, drugs, money, fame. You'll never have enough to satisfy your ego, But when you stop for a minute and you just find the simple appreciation in the little things, you discover that you're living life in that moment, and this is it. And here's the funny thing. All of your accomplishments are one little step at a time. They're just one little step, going over and tuning the guitar, that's just a little step. Sitting down and putting my fingers on it, that's a little step. Listening for a melody and enjoying finding that melody, that's a little step. Walking out onto a stage is just a little step. Standing on that stage and playing, it's really a little step. Right. But if you're enjoying each little step, then you're able to appreciate that little step, and that's what life is made out of, little steps.
Yeah.
But if you're like, if your mind is just completely unhappy, and this is you can see this mechanism at work in yourself. I see it all the time. I've seen it for years. I lived in it for a long period of time, just never satisfied. Always have to have more. That's a prison. It's like a form of suffering.
It is.
And you can still, you'll always create. Right. You're always going to create. But when you enjoy the steps as you go, you're building a foundation that's truly, it restores a sense of inclusive of others. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You include others in your creative enjoyment in the moment, and this transforms your life, really.
I think what you said, like for me, a good takeaway there was to measure accomplishments in a smaller sort of fashion. You know, you don't need to finish the marathon before you start enjoying yourself. You could like enjoy the training each mile you do. You know, I think there's a lot of common sense there.
Yeah. Only understand it if you try it.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to ask you a couple of questions just about some of your songs. In Liberty, at the end of that song on Passion and Warfare, I think David Coverdale says, "We may be human, but we're still animals." Where was your head at when that? Like, what was going on that prompted that?
I don't know. Part of this, you know, when you start a project, sometimes you go into realms of fantasy. I created this whole story around passion and warfare that was kind of the result of these dreams I was having at the time. And I guess that was, we're still humans. We may be human, but we're still animals. It's sort of right there with passion and warfare.
Okay.
There's the human aspect of us. And then there's, you know, just the play on words, but we're still animals, which usually represents that, you know, we're
savage.
We're savage, and we're only concerned with survival.
Yeah.
And, you
know? Junkie, that was a surprising song also. That was off Flexible. What's the backstory to that? Dude, what are you eating? This looks delicious. You're just like making me hungry. It's a sandwich, but you're eating it like it's I don't know, man. Like, remember the Galloping Gourmet? Do you remember that guy?
Never Galloping Gourmet.
He used to eat something. It could have been like something gross. Luscious. Lovely.
And then he'd sip that wine.
Yeah.
I'm eating a croissant vegetarian sandwich.
There you
Sorry.
go. No, it's all good. Enjoy it, man. I'm just getting hungry, Steve.
Well, I'll give you, but we don't have that technology yet.
Yeah. Our kids' age.
Yeah. So Junkie was, I was young, and it was my first sort of awareness of the, you know, of drugs and heroin. And I had a cousin at the time that was an addict, and she was doing some incredibly bad things based on this. Yeah. So I understand that people that are trapped in the prison of addiction, they're not themselves.
Yeah.
You know, and that's basically what the song is a take on.
Yeah. It's a pretty moving song, man. It's, yeah. And then just one other, you have a song on there, man, and I'll see if I can pronounce it. Mullock at Sea. It's like a Gaelic or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah. Thank you. That's a beautiful piece. You know,
yeah.
It's very rare that I do covers.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cover. That's an ancient Gaelic lullaby. And when I was doing the research for Alive in an Ultra World, I had purchased all of this Gaelic music, Celtic. Mm-hmm. And there's something about the quality of that music that really resonates with me. And that piece was, I was carrying it around for years and years and listening to it. And it was performed by, oh boy, you don't happen to have the record in front of you, do you?
Hang on a sec. No, I have on.
Pronounced, but I have anyway. I had this recording by this lovely woman from Ireland that had played that song, recorded that song, and I just listened to it for years, and finally I contacted her, and and I did a cover of it.
It's a beautiful song, man.
Pretty
really cool. And is it possible for you to pick like your top 3 musical experiences for whatever reason, personalities, your performance, the hang, the environment? Like, what would be the knee-jerk reaction to the first few things that come to mind?
Well, I might give you a different answer.
Right. It's like asking you the Desert Island Discs just for right now.
Well, when I think about perhaps the most profound musical experience I ever had, I think I was about 4 years old, and I had really no knowledge of music at the time or anything, obviously. And I walked up to a piano and I hit a note. It was a piano at my aunt's house. And I noticed that to the right, I mean, we just would look at the piano. We didn't know what it was, you know. And I noticed that you weren't allowed to touch anything at my aunt's house, you know.
Did they have plastic on the furniture?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You had to go in that room and they had plastic on the furniture. Must be a Long Island Italian thing.
You know, it's just like a thing back in those days. It was like, I don't want anybody to sit on the furniture. They put plastic. Well, no one's going to sit on it. Don't worry. That thing feels like shit.
Out in her room, you know. But when no one was around, I went to the piano and I hit a note, and then I noticed that to the right they go higher, and to the left they go lower. And right at that moment, I had like a full-on epiphany of what music was. It just became clear, you know. And I realized when I would hear music, I could kind of see it, how it was stacked, not necessarily the exact notes, but the construction of music, what it looked like in the physical world, so to speak, in notes and stuff. And that was a huge kind of a aha moment. But following it was the realization that the creation of music is an infinite process. There's no end, because you can combine notes infinitely with different things, you know, and how to create music just became very clear for some reason. So that was the first. The second, I'll just pick this one. When you're a practicing guitar player, or in any field that you're working to hone your vessel, so to speak, you hit certain plateaus. You know, like you hit a spot and it's like you've gotten over a hump.
Sure. And
I remember I was practicing all the time, and when I was about 15, I was sitting there practicing, and my a certain picking technique came into play, and the whole neck sort of opened up to me, you know, and the theory that I was learning seemed to have opened up on the neck, because before it was kind of like a mystery. I could write music and compose music and use all of the tools to compose music, but I didn't really know how to apply it on the guitar. And when I was taking lessons from Joe Satch, I was 12, you know, and Joe was always great, you know, and I took lessons from him for like 3 years. He was my god, my mentor, and he taught me everything. You know, he taught me how to apply this music theory on the guitar. So that was like a big epiphany, you know. And a third, you know, like I say, I could give you different Oh, okay. Well, here's one. I was performing in Barcelona, and I think it was on the Real Illusions tour, and I was very sick. I had like a bad bronchitis flu, you know, was almost delirious. But, you know, you do the show anyway. You just figure, you know, you just do the show. And the show sold out pretty quickly, so we added another show. 2.5-hour shows to do that one night. And I was really sick, and I got through the first show. And the second show, I was just kind of like in this weird state of everything felt kind of surreal. And I just started playing, and my mind became sharply focused on the neck and the notes. You know, it was a very different way to perceive what I was doing, because most of the time, if you're on stage, you know, your mind can be churning quite a bit. You could be thinking, oh, okay, what's coming up next? What does this sound like? I wonder what the people think. What about that guy there that's just frowning? Shit, why is the drummer behind? I can't really hear the bass, you know.
Holy shit, I'm overwhelmed just listening to this. I can't imagine what it's like when you're up there, like how to manage all that crap.
No, especially if the sound is really bad, and if you're playing shitty, or, you know, if there's whatever, you pick something and the mind goes to it in fears, you know.
Yeah.
But in this particular scenario, I had for some reason, maybe it was the sickness and the fatigue. I had completely surrendered all thoughts except what I was doing. And I didn't even think about what I was doing. I was observing it. So I for some reason, I was able to enter this frame of mind that was as a complete observer. And I've had that frame of mind in the past. And many creative people or anybody, when they're doing something really creative or effective, they're in that frame of mind. You know, I call it the ultrazone.
Yeah.
It's just another word for presence.
Yeah.
Being present. I became sharply present, and there was just this magic that seemed to happen. It felt like everything I was playing was effortless and elegant and beautiful. And I felt like I was, I know this sounds odd, but I felt like I was like a foot off the stage, kind of floating. I'm sure it had to do with, you know, the sickness, whatever. But in that moment, I had surrendered to any thought except, well, no, I surrendered to all thoughts and only observed. And that's the state of mind I strive for whenever I perform since that day.
How often do you get in the zone like that?
Well, it's always there in the background. Do you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And sometimes it's more powerful than others, but I'm not a master. And I still have, there's a lot of mind momentum of thoughts, you know, because if I hear somebody out of tune, I'm not going to be, you know, I don't hear that.
Does that stick in your, like, if someone's out of tune, is that like throughout the whole
head, brother?
Yeah.
You know?
That's got to be tough, man. Wow.
But you know, even then, you there's no sense in stressing over it.
Yeah.
I guess the most important thing that I learned at that moment was stress is optional.
It really is, man. In many things, it really is.
Yeah.
I went through this like really down period about in like 2009, and one of the conclusions I came to is that I'm done with stress, like self-imposed stress. You know, like if life throws you some shit, okay, you know you can't only control so much. But I felt there's so much things that I'm responsible for, and I was so ready to do that. It was literally like shutting a light switch off.
Yeah,
and it like felt like a 1,000,000-pound weight.
Yeah, congratulations. That's one of the meanings of you know, quality of life.
It really has helped.
Yeah,
it really has helped. And I make every decision now. Like there's a little thing. What's the least? You know, like I often used to make decisions on purpose to take the thing that was most difficult because I wanted to prove that I could do difficult things. And now I'm the opposite. I say, what's the least stressful path? And then that's the decision I gravitate to because it's why wouldn't I?
Why wouldn't you?
You know, like what, you know, how stupid would I be not to if I could, you know, so that's what I try to identify. And I try to tell my kids that it's like, because it's made such a huge change for me, man.
Yeah. The path of least resistance.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah. But what you recognize when you can recognize in yourself the suffering, the stress, only then can you start to dissolve it, because you discover that what stress is. Stress isn't generated from anything outside of you in the outside world. It'll look that way, but it's like when somebody says, you know, you're stressing me out. Well, another way to put that more accurately is, you know, I'm allowing your actions to create stress in me.
Right.
Because that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And when you but it's hard for people to believe that because the ego is always placing blame outside of itself. It has to find the guilt in somebody. You know.
Well, but one of the things that for me helped is I'm when you said I really enjoyed responsibility for taking care of yourself. I love that. And I really feel that if anything fucks up, it's my fault to a great extent.
Yeah, but there's no fault. That's the big mystery. It's just the path that was needed to be taken at that time to arrive at a solution.
Yeah.
Also true, and the evidence of that, people would say, "Oh, you're crazy." No, there's no reason why this happened. Well, look at the evidence that anything that happens is actually there's a plus to it. Is just by looking at your past. There's so many things that happen that we judge, which is stressful, creates stress. When in actuality, we change our judgment about it later as it being good or wrong, good or bad, right or wrong. So there's no way for anybody to really know what is actually good or bad or right or wrong in the bigger scheme of things. You can't judge anything. Not that you shouldn't, you just can't. Because in order to judge something as being good or bad, you'd have to understand the effects that it has on everything that came before it, the effect it's having when it's happening, and the effect it's going to have on everybody's life after it. So when you understand that, you alleviate yourself from worrying about thinking that you can fix it or you have to fix it.
Yes.
And that's stress. Stress is always only ever caused by you looking into the past or the future and believing and judging it somehow. That causes stress because there's always some kind of fear about the future and regret about the past. So stress is self-generated when in actuality, you're going to go through the same events, but without a stressful overview. The things that happen don't seem right or wrong or bad. They're just what they are.
Yeah.
I'm getting pretty out there now. So
no, you're good, man. You're fine. No, man, you can't connect the dots moving forward is the bottom line. You got to look at shit and you don't know why something happens. And I've been through enough stuff that at that point in time, I was like, you know what, whatever, fine. I'll see what's the end of this thing later, but I'm not going to stress about it. I can't.
Stressing is like it's an assault on yourself.
Oh my God, yeah.
But you can't alleviate it until you realize that you're doing it, because your mind. This is a good one. One of the things that your mind tells you is that if you're not stressing over this situation, you're not being responsible.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, it's funny because my wife tends to worry sometimes about stuff, and she's like, "How can you not worry?" And I'm like, "Babe, what's the, that is not, if worry would change something or cause me the solution or cause us the solution that we're looking for, I'd be worrying. I'd be in my room worrying the shit out of myself right now."
What you recognize is that worrying only creates more the thing you're worrying about.
Right, exactly. So I just gave it up. I'm done. I gave up. Yeah. Man, where in Long Island did you grow up?
A little town called Carr Place.
Where's that?
It's right in between Mineola and Westbury.
Is that near North Shore Animal League?
I don't know. Okay. It's kind of like if you're coming from the city, there's it's past Queens and not too far, but it's in Nassau County.
Okay. What was your childhood like growing up?
It was fantastic. Of course, I had traumatic events and all that kind of shit, but for the most part, I grew up in a rural area. I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and they were magnificent and still are. I had everything. I had great friends. The school I went to was fantastic. A lot of still friends with many people.
That's cool.
And a lot of partying. There was various groups that I hung out with. One of them was, the kids on my block were very sort of benign and calm and really into like progressive music. So there was this one good friend of mine that lived 2 houses away. His name is John Sergio. He was another mentor of sorts because he just turned me on to all this. I was only listening to Led Zeppelin, He brought like my first Queen concert and turned me on to Jethro Tull, all the great bands. And he loved music. He gave me Joe Satriani's phone number because he was taking lessons from him.
That's funny.
It's in the first band I was ever in. So, and my, on the other street was all the greasers and all the real troublemakers. And I hung out with them quite a bit too. And formed a band with them. And that was probably one of the greatest times in my life, really. Being in that band in high school with those guys and all of our friends and just playing those little clubs and getting in trouble all the time was fun. And my parents were really wonderful. My mom was just the kind of mom that you can only ever dream of in a storybook, And my dad, he had his challenges in the beginning. My father was a liquor salesman and a bartender. So he kind of got sucked into the drinking thing, and I think it came in the back door on him, and it really wreaked havoc in the family for a while. But I was so fortunate because when I was 12 years old, he just quit drinking, and he was a pretty hard alcoholic, and he just quit and continued to be a bartender and a liquor salesman. I just can't even.
Wow! Wait a minute. That is. Quitting is like almost pales in comparison to quitting and then staying in that business. That's
yeah. But like cold turkey, man. Not another word.
Did he go to a program no, AA? Nothing. Just
woke up and just, as far as I know.
Yeah. That's wild.
But alcoholism leaves its scars, so it was many years before I kind of put it aside and got to know my father as the unbelievably funny, cool, amazing guy that he was. And I'm glad that I got some years with him on that level. And I just a very tight family, and still is.
Are you the only one out in California, or anybody else come out with you?
My older sister Pam is here. She actually has been my bookkeeper and assistant for like 35 years.
Hey man, if you got to have someone in the books, it's good to have a family member,
That's for sure.
That's awesome.
And my sister Lillian just moved out here, which is
that's great.
Yeah, she was like my best friend growing up, so it's
very
really
cool, man.
Right here, yeah. And she's actually living in our guest house right now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Hey, what were some maybe the lower points or the dark periods you've had to deal with, and how'd you get through them? Whatever you want to share, personal, music, business, whatever you'd like.
Yeah. Well, I've had some, dealing with with having an alcoholic father at the time had its real challenges, because there's a lot of things that go on in a young person's head when they're exposed to that kind of thing. Ultimately, they blame themselves for some reason. This does a great disservice. They do themselves a great disservice when they blame themselves for the activities of others.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that because it's not true.
Yeah, for sure, man.
The end. And I've had some, I've never done drugs in my life, like, cocaine or LSD or anything like that. When I was young, I started probably smoking pot when I was 12 or 13, and cigarettes and the thing.
That was the age.
Yeah, that was the age. And then when I was 15, I had a terrible experience with drugs, accidental kind of thing. And it really, really had an effect, and which was good. It was a blessing because I never got into drugs.
That was great.
As a result. A couple of things, I was traumatic events. I was with a boy that got electrocuted he was burnt up pretty bad.
Holy crap.
Yeah. When the new electric trains came to town,
Wow.
We were fooling around on the railroad tracks, and he survived, but he got burnt up really bad. And that had a traumatic kind of an effect. And I could tell you a funny, stupid story. Okay.
Yeah.
You ready for this? Yeah. This is the kind of thing that can have an effect on a weak mind like mine at that time. Do you remember that movie, The Omen?
Oh yeah, Damien.
The Antichrist.
Yes.
Was born on 666.
Yeah.
Well, my birthday is 666.
Holy, June 6th, 1966?
1960.
1960. Okay, 666. Wow.
On 666, I turned 6. I know, right? So when you're, 10
oh my God.
And, people are starting to actually, some of your friends and stuff who are not very balanced themselves are actually afraid of you because you're the Antichrist.
Oh my God.
You can, and you can start.
Holy shit.
And so this was there was a little period of time there where I actually questioned myself.
Oh my God. Yeah, I could easy see that as a young kid. Oh my God. Easy. Definitely.
Complete insane thinking.
Yeah, but you're a young kid. You don't have any coping skills. You just, and then 50 million Frenchmen can't be wrong. If everybody's saying it, oh my God, I got to at least consider it,
Yeah. Even to this day, when I tell people that, you can see the ones that buy into that shit. They're like, oh, they just changed. There's superstition and fear in them that I might be like this weird.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And there's actually websites I've seen that people have built around me being the Antichrist.
Of course. Hey, and everything is true on the internet. So,
And everything is true. And it's funny because it's got all this dark music and it points to all these things in my career that might lead somebody to believe that I'm an Antichrist. It's really funny.
Well, it's funny. That goes to show you, don't believe everything you see in writing, because people could slant anything anyway. Anyway, it's like, you read not to get off on this, but you read a study from a pharmaceutical company and there are all this shit. And then you look a little further, coincidentally, they're selling a medication that supports that. Well, of course they're going to have that result. They're not going to tell you about all the shit that doesn't work, Wow. That's wild. And for the record,
my life has been pretty smooth sailing, brother.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's real good. And anything that you did that was out of your comfort zone at the time that turned out to be a huge plus that you did anyway?
Yeah, there was many things that seemed a little fear, like joining Frank's band.
Yeah.
Are you referring to my professional career or
whatever you like? Yeah, whatever.
Well, yeah, you make, you don't know sometimes because your fantasies can get the best of you, Sometimes you start doing things and even while you're doing them, you're like, I don't know, this isn't me. So I have done things that, you look back at and you think, well, maybe I could have done something better. But then again, I don't see things as, I don't see that it's possible for anybody to do wrong things because you're always going to be led to be doing things that have consequences. And those consequences are lessons, so to speak.
Oh yeah, of course.
So, there's no real mistakes really.
Yeah. I agree with you there, man. Let's talk about, since this is Everyone Loves Guitar, for a few minutes anyway, let's talk about guitar.
One of you're skipping a series of questions, and that's okay. But one thing I would add,
tell me.
There goes my good memory again. What were we just talking about?
You were talking about, making some mistakes. There's really no mistakes, and you said you've done a couple of things that you shouldn't have done. And
sorry. So a lot of times the question is, have you done anything in the past that you've regretted or that you feel like was a mistake?
Yeah.
Or that you would have done differently?
Yeah.
And my answer for me, at least, is, yeah, there's things that I can see now that I would have done differently, that I could have, not that I could have done differently, but if I would have done differently, may have turned out differently. But that's okay because I'm doing them now.
Yeah.
And I can only know, and this goes for everybody, you can only act out the conditioning of where you're at any given time in your life.
Right.
Meaning, if you look back at your past, you've had certain tools, mental, psychological tools, whatever, to deal with certain things. And your perspective was a particular way. And your decisions were made based on your perspective of things at that time. This is just reality 101. Right?
Yeah, right.
No debating that. Any decision that anybody makes to do anything is predicated on previous decisions. So you don't really, in a sense, there's only one choice that you can ever make, and it's the choice you make, because that's where you were at that time. And the evidence of this is the fact that that's the decision you made. Now, any decision that you make is going to have consequences. So you may come to decide later that that was a really good decision, but then something may happen where you say, well, maybe I could do that differently. And then you have an opportunity to do it differently, because in reality, the same situation, not the situation, but the same set of principles are being presented to you in every situation. And any decision you make at any given time is based entirely on where you were at that time. So you would make a different decision now because you've had the experience of the previous decision.
Yeah.
So in this regard, there's things I would do differently in the past, but I wouldn't change anything because you can't, and you learn from it. And now I'm making different decisions, and I'm making decisions now that may not be the very best decisions for certain things.
Right.
I'll realize that later, and then I'll have better tools.
Yeah. Coping skills and evaluation stuff. Yeah. I'm with you on that, man. I used to have a lot of things, man, I shouldn't have done this. But the truth is that was it. I had the skill. That was where I was at, and that was the coping skills I had, and the conversation next, Yeah.
When people could really embrace what we're talking about here, it's the elimination of stress, guilt, blame, and it introduces forgiveness, because
yes, that's a big one, man, for me, for self-forgiveness.
Self-forgiveness, and also, forgiveness of others and the world. It's very simple. When true forgiveness is the realization that there's nothing to forgive.
Yeah.
Because anybody that has done anything, and many times we carry this stuff around in our head for our whole life, what that person did to us, or what they didn't do that they should have done, or what I did, what you did, or what you didn't do that you should have done, all these past regrets and everything. When you realize that at any given time in the past, the decisions that a person made were the only one that they really could have made, that's forgiveness. Because it's sort of like saying to somebody, don't be gay. Don't be short.
Yeah.
It's not. Be white. Don't be black. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So it's like saying, whenever you say to somebody, you could have made this decision. That's a form of insanity to say that, because they couldn't have. Does that make sense?
Man, it makes total sense.
So this way, it's a form of forgiveness. It's true forgiveness, because you're just kind of like, all right, this is what it is. Let's move on. And that releases a lot of stress.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Okay, now we could talk about guitar.
When did you last practice, and what were you working on? Do you still practice? I mean, I kind of know that you got to practice. I know you.
Yeah, I got to, because I continue to work on stuff that I can't do. And I yesterday was Sunday. I played for about 4 hours Sunday. Yesterday.
Who were you working on?
This song for my new record. The working title is Candle Power.
Of the record or the song? All right, this is it. He's getting the guitar. Awesome. There you go.
Yeah.
We're done.
I came up with this really weird riff. I can't play it. I've been working on it for quite a while. But it has to do with the bending of certain strings while holding other strings. It's sort of like okay, let me see if I can remember it. Oh, it's so complicated. But it kind of...
Wait a minute, Steve. Angle your thing down so I can see your hand, your left hand at least. Yeah. You can't sit and play in front of me and I can't see you. There you go.
It's this kind of thing where you bend a note and you it's very melodic. I can't remember what it is because I was doing it piece by piece.
Uh-huh.
It's really freaky, and it sounds amazing. I wish I could show you right now, but
wait a minute. That guitar, what is that? That's a beautiful design on that guitar, man.
Yeah, I hand painted it.
That is gorgeous, man.
Thank you. It's fun. I have about four hand-painted guitars.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah. But this one riff that I'm working on, it's really cool. It goes back to exactly what we talked about in the beginning. This riff is not going to make me famous or wealthy or rich or any of that stuff, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it's so much fun to imagine it and see it in my mind's eye, and then work on it and work on it and work on it. And I've been working on it. My fingers are racked, man. You know, they're just all torn up and shit.
They are.
Because you have to bend notes in directions, different directions at the same time while fretting other notes that are not bent, and then slide them and move them up the neck. It sounds unlike anything I've ever heard on a guitar, and it's kind of brief, but it's a tremendous amount of work.
So when you get an idea for this and you can't execute it the way you have it, you hear it in your head, do you sing it into something, or do you play it on a keyboard so you could retain it?
No, it's a mental snapshot, and it's not going to go away because it's too compelling. This is
okay.
This is what I was kind of referring to, where this is the one thing that has people ask, how have you come up with, or whenever you're talking to a creative person or something, the question is, how do you do this? And really, it's just recognizing an exciting idea. And this idea is so exciting to me. I don't know why. It's just, I don't know. It's the idea, the visualization of it is exciting enough. But then working it out, listen, brother, when I picked up the guitar to do the riff, it was as if I was playing left.
No
chops for it at all, because it's completely peculiar. I've never seen really anybody doing it really effectively. And so that's really exciting to me. So exciting that I just really love working on it. I can't work on it too much because my fingers just get really sore, because you have to bend. Take the G string and bend it 2 frets with one finger down, like something like this.
Yeah. Okay. And then
that note and that note, and then bend that note. So you're bending all these notes and holding them, and that pitch has to be right.
Right.
It's almost impossible, So I wish I could play it for you, but it's still. I would work on one bar and then record it, and then try to get a semblance of what it sounds like, and then learn the whole thing. And I haven't gotten to that stage with it yet. And it's only 8 bars, and it's taking me weeks.
But what do you do if you get 5 mental snapshots of? Because you're not limited to one idea. How do you remember 5 different? You'll be. Waking up, you'll wake up tomorrow morning with something in your head, and then you got this other thing that how do you don't you have to record any of that stuff, or how do you keep them in your head?
Yeah. I document them somehow.
Okay.
And sometimes a lot of times I do it on my iPhone. I've been doing this since I was 13, where, and it's something I highly recommend, is when you have an idea, don't second guess yourself that it's a good idea or not. You'll know. And just capture it somehow, whether it's even just the chord changes, just a couple of little simple chord changes where you're singing a melody, or if you write music, you can write it down, or if it's an idea that you can't play. I have a lot of little snippets where I'm explaining an idea into my phone.
Yeah, sure.
And all you really, what I discovered is all you really need to do is capture the essence of the idea, and that essence carries the inspiration in it. And then when I go okay, here's one that I have a guitar by my bed, and usually at night I pick it up and something comes out. So this little riff came out, I think. Okay, it's just an electric guitar and an iPhone. Oh, I remember this now.
How long ago did you put that down?
A couple days.
Yeah. You may have 20 of those in a week.
20? Oh, in a week? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But I have what I call the infinity shelf. and there's thousands and thousands of snippets. And when I want to write a song, I just go to it and pull.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so it's a fodder for ideas, and you can. Yeah, that's really smart. Yeah. What's your favorite song that you wrote, and what's your favorite song to play of yours?
Well, that's another question that could be answered different every time it's asked.
Yeah, I'm sure.
There's a couple of songs that I really resonate with, but usually I've had this little kind of inner policy with myself when I would record something. And what that is at some point during in any song that I write or play or record, there needs to be something that's unique to me, and maybe unique to the rest of the world, I don't know. But I need to feel that I've done something that I've never done before, and that I'm expanding somehow, So
with
like
every song,
every single song. And like
holy
that
shit! Hold on a second. That is like very difficult expectations.
But it's fun.
I know. But that's really.
I know I can do it, and I know anybody can do it.
Okay.
I know anybody can do it if you just say, "Okay, now what is that special thing?" And you just mess around, and it comes out. So, any songs that don't have that, I don't really even listen to them. Because there are songs in my catalog that are just like wallpaper that, I may have written for one reason or another, or maybe, but usually most songs have something in them. And a lot of times it's just a feeling that I'm looking for. So you take a song like, I'll just pick one, Die to Live from Alien Love Secrets, or the song Frank from the Ultrazone. They're simple guitar pieces, but there's a little energy in some of the riffs that really push my button. There's one piece of music on Passion and Warfare called Love Secrets that was stream of consciousness composition, and I just built it as I went, and it turned out to be incredibly kind of abstract, but it's very musical. And it's really a unique piece of music in its structure and just its bizarreness, So that I gravitate to a lot when people say, "What's your favorite song that you wrote?" To perform, it's really based on what's in the set list, because I love performing them all. Some are a little more challenging than others. They all kind of, the songs I pick for the show, once I have them under my finger, they're all really quite a joy to play.
That's cool.
Yeah. Just recently I don't know why, but I was looking online at this one song called Campidouille, which is on Real Illusions. And it's just like simple guitar, bass, and drums, but there's just something to me, and obviously to a few other people, it's just something very sweet about it. It really captured my love for the instrument, and I did it on tour back then, and I just really enjoyed playing it. Just one of those moments of appreciation, so to speak.
Thanks. This is a funny question to ask a guy with, like, what do you have, like 400 guitars or something? You ever sell a guitar that you wish you could get back?
Oh yeah. I didn't. The thing is, I never sold them. I gave them away.
Oh, okay.
I've only recently started selling them. About 5 years now. But yeah, I was kind of. I don't regret giving them away, but there was I gave away virtually all my main guitars. Like the guitar. I gave Prince my 7-string that I recorded For the Love of God on. I gave a friend the original 7-string, that the very first one made, the prototype. I tried to get that one back, but it was too expensive.
Holy shit. So they had sold it to somebody else at that point? And
I ended up selling them. And it's theirs,
Yeah, sure.
I've helped them sell them. but some of them I don't really care. These days I'm not so concerned. The reason we just did this huge reconnaissance mission, tried to locate, it took a couple of years actually, to build a library on Vi.com of all of my guitars that I've ever owned.
I saw that.
Yeah, one project, and it's kind of interesting for guitar geeks,
Yeah, very interesting. Do you remember the first, so it would be LP that you bought?
The first LP I bought was Yogi Bear and Friends.
The first non-cartoon LP.
Yeah, the second CD I ever bought was Freak Out by Frank Zappa.
Wow. And how old were you?
Oh, God, I don't know. 7 or 8.
That's intense, man. 7 or 8, you're listening to Zappa.
Yeah.
That's pretty intense.
Yeah, and then it was the Partridge Family picture disc.
I remember I had that one then.
Yeah, I love that one. Point me in the direction of work.
This is another one of those questions, man, just for right now. Snapshot, Desert Island Discs. Top 3 or 4.
Oh, boy. Any good recording of The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky? Any Tom Waits record?
Do you know how popular Tom Waits is with guys I interview?
Oh, he's my favorite artist. He's
off the charts.
Yeah, off the charts. He's just my absolute favorite. I don't go anywhere without his entire catalog with me. And maybe either the soundtrack to the music of West Side Story, which was one of the first records I heard when I was young that lit me up, or probably Overnight Sensation by Frank Zappa.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be it. That might change if you ask me later, you know what I mean?
Oh, it will change. Yeah, that's why I always say just knee-jerk reaction right now, man. Now Steve's on the pickle. The sandwich is almost gone, man. I'll tell you, that was the best sandwich I never ate, Steve. There you go. Oh, you still got a whole half left, man. I'll be over in an hour. Best decision you ever made?
The best decision I ever made?
Yeah.
Well, if it's true what they say that you decide to come to the planet, if you're deciding to be born, I think that was probably the best decision I ever made.
All right, second best.
How the hell to get out? I never thought I'd be the marrying kind when I was young. But I met a lovely girl in college, Pia. Mm-hmm. And we dated for about 10 years, and then we got married, and we've been together for 40 years. And that was a really good decision.
I got to tell you, man, congratulations, because that is not an easy, and I don't mean that like your situation wasn't easy. You know, it's work. You got to put the, you know, sometimes I'll say that to people because I've been with my wife, Ann, for 26 years, and it's the best decision I ever made by far. But, you know, it's work, man. You got to work together. You got to compromise. And to do that long, man, that's congratulations. That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. I discovered that because that's a very common perception that you have to work on your marriage. But what I discovered is you're only ever really working on yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's been one of my greatest teachers, really.
But you got to do the work, man, because it ain't going to happen otherwise, you know. Somebody once told me that a long time ago. He said, you know, your marriage is like your business. If you stop working it, it stops working, you know, and I took that to heart. But yeah, ultimately it's working on yourself to fix the shit that's wrong or that to be better, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Your spouse is your vital relationship in life.
Oh God, yeah.
Or I mean, we have relations, all sorts of different kinds with our coworkers, our brothers and sisters, our parents, our children. You know, all these different relationships. But really, the the most important one is with your partner.
I agree. I think so, man. Tough question. What do you like most about yourself?
I really am appreciative that I like people. I really like people, and I just like. I can't really explain it. I just it was something that I think came about through a lot of spiritual studies that I've done, because most people know me as a musician, but in reality, the amount of focus and time I've put into spiritual studies is on par with any time I've spent being a musician. And it's been extraordinarily helpful to me, because when I was younger, at the age of 20, I went through a pretty dark period, sort of like a dark night of the soul, and it was about a year and a half of intense anxiety and depression. And again, it reached a point where I just had to surrender. And once I did, certain cooperative components started to come on my radar. And one of them was this extraordinary bookstore in Hollywood called the Bodhi Tree. They had all this, these books on metaphysics and spirituality and religions. And I just started studying. And what happens is you go through all sorts of different phases based on where you're starting from and what your instincts are and your insights and I had nothing, So through all these studies, I come to realize, I may have said that your most important relationship is with your spouse, but in reality, your most important relationship is with your fellow man and how you perceive them. And I've discovered that I really enjoy liking people. I like people. I love people, actually. I really do. I can sit in an airport and just sit and stare at everybody and find an appreciation for them. And I know that they're all, a lot of people are crazy, and I am. And we all have these hang-ups and whatever. And some people you wouldn't even want to be in the same room with. But I don't see that as who they really are. There's something, people are infinitely deep. And when you approach them with that kind of perspective, that's what you get back.
Yeah, man, that is very true. The vibes you put out are critical to what you get back, especially early on in something, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wouldn't say it's something that I like about myself. It's something that I appreciate about myself, I guess.
What is something you like about yourself?
I don't know. I appreciate the. I love the fact that I have a great body. Now I don't mean that. I don't mean that like I really do not have what people would consider a sexy body. It's great. It's in good shape. It's strong enough. It's right home about. I've got huge plates of meats for hands.
You do, man. Your freaking hands are massive, dude.
Those are the best, man. They're so big, and I willed them to be this big.
Did you? How big were they when you first started? Before you started willing them?
Kind of normal, I mean, they were big, but they weren't. When I was young, when I was a kid, I wanted big hands, and I would just stare at them and imagine that they were growing and growing and growing. And as a result, my hands are completely out of proportion to any other appendage on my body. I mean, I'm okay, but. For instance, if my penis was in proportion to my hands, I'd have a real career.
You'd have another career going, right? Like a plan B.
So I like that. I like that. I feel good. I like that. I like that about myself. I don't know. It's a funny question.
It is a funny question, man.
I'm alive. All these things. I don't know.
Best childhood memory.
This is the first one that came along. My brothers all rode motorcycles, and my brother Roger had Harleys, and I always wanted a Harley. I was fascinated with motorbikes, motorcycles, mini bikes, My father was really against me having them because I was young. But everybody had them, and I would just try to figure out, how am I going to get a mini bike? How am I going to get a mini bike? And one day I was sitting around the corner with my friends in the street, and this car drove by, and strapped to the back of the car was the most amazing mini bike I had ever seen in my life. This thing, it was a dune bike. It was gigantic. It had these big fat wheels, like, you know, they were like a foot and a half across, and they were thick, and they had big treads. And it was just amazing. And I looked at it and I just wanted to faint, you know, and it just drove by. So I hung my head and walked home. And when I got home, it was in my driveway.
Wow.
My father bought it for me.
That is so cool, man.
Yeah, man. It was like, I couldn't even believe that I owned it. And I lived on that motorcycle.
That is really cool, man.
Yeah, it was really great.
That is a great story, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
Most talk about your dad. Most important thing he taught you.
My father had an unbelievable work ethic, and I learned of a great work ethic from him. But he also had a great kind of sense of humor, and that was nice. That was nice also. He was just a good guy.
How about your mom? Most important thing she taught you? You said she was extremely maternal and loving.
Yeah, she selfless love. You know, my mother was her love was really pure, and just the feeling of acceptance and nurturing, and what it feels like to be loved, to have that feeling of love and protection. You know, I learned that, and but it's powerful because I know what it's like when I express that to others. You know, when I have that unquestionable kind of love for somebody, like my mother had. That's the greatest gift that you can give anybody. And I think I learned that from my mom.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know. Are your kids older or younger, or both?
27 and 30.
Okay. So you've probably experienced this. You know, when they're younger, they don't give you that feedback, but when they're older, they come to you and tell you stuff that, you know, you really never know. You know, you think you did a good job because your intentions were there, and you know the effort was there, but you don't really know. And then when they come and tell you something, man, it's just like something simple that like tells you, you know, hey, you did this good, I appreciate it, or something like that. Man, like that's a home run for the year, man, when they tell you that, you know.
It really is, and I'm so fortunate because I get a lot of that from my boys.
Do you have any non-musical superpowers? Besides huge hands.
Well, I use my huge hands to move mountains, so I guess that doesn't count, right?
No, of course not. You can't move it. No.
No, I don't have any superpowers.
This is interesting. Has your life been different than what you'd imagined?
Well, I didn't imagine anything. You know, it's because I don't know how life's going to go. You know, so I think I know what you're referring to, though. When I was young, and I was learning music, I was really fortunate because I had this music class. I was allowed to take a high school music class in 7th grade, and it was intense. And it was taught by this guy, Bill Westcott. And he was like a savant genius, you know. Ask Joe. And because Joe had this, you know, had Bill. And he taught me so much. He gave me a whole lease on life. You know, he taught me the secret language of music that allowed me to compose and to understand music. So I actually thought when I was in high school that I would be very happy to just be a high school music teacher.
Wow.
Yeah. when I was graduating and going to Berkeley, I had no expectations of being, famous or anything like that. Although I knew it was a possibility, I was very content with the idea of being a high school teacher. And I kind of pictured a particular life of normalcy. Well, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Like going to work, teaching kids, and then coming home and having a life, and that was fine for me. But that's not how it turned out. And, I would have been happy either way, I think.
Yeah. Biggest business and personal wins.
Oh, boy. Well, the biggest business win probably started when I was young, when after I recorded Flexible and I wanted to put it out, I started to look into getting a record deal. And there was one label that offered me a deal. And when I looked at it, I thought, you got to be kidding me. This is real.
Yeah.
They were going to give me a $10,000 advance.
That you had to pay back.
That I had to pay back for my royalties alone, which were 25 cents a record.
Right. So the money they were making didn't contribute towards your loan. Right.
No.
Okay.
And they sold their records for $4.10, paid me 25 cents, and the $10,000 had to be recouped from my 25 cents, and they own the record in perpetuity, which means we're everywhere.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, are you fucking high?
Yeah.
Where is the balance in this? So I took it to an attorney, and he said, "Oh no, this is a conventional record deal, and this is the way most record deals are structured, and you're lucky to be offered it."
You're lucky.
Yeah. So I said, "No, I'm not." And that was only because, like I said, I had no expectations of being famous or anything. So, and I just didn't like the idea of what the structure of this record deal was, and that was conventional. So I just did a little research, and I discovered that record labels sell the product to distributors, and the distributors are the ones that get it into the stores. So I started to call distributors, and which is ridiculous because distributors don't take records from individuals, they take them from labels.
Sure.
But I found a distributor that was interested because I had done work with Frank by that time, and he was a Frank fan. So I made my own little label. I think I was probably 23, and I released Flexible on it through Important Records Distribution, and they were paying me $4.10 a record, and I retained the rights. And I had a lot of momentum promotion at the time because the Attitude song, which was on Flexible, is kind of innovative at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it appeared in the magazine on a flexi disc. So, some people were very interested in what it was and what I was doing. And then they bought Flexible and were like, what is this?
Right.
But then, Important Records took 1,000. So that was like $4,100, which was a lot of money.
Right.
And then they took another 1,000 and another 1,000 and another 1,000. And then their international affiliates started taking records. And then when CDs came along, I had the same kind of distribution deal, and I was making $7.50 per CD. And once Crossroads hit and Dave Roth hit, I sold about 400,000.
Holy crap.
Yeah, so that was a pretty good business decision.
Yeah, and good for you.
I was able to do it only because I didn't panic. I didn't feel desperate that my future lied in the hands of another company. It's crazy. And it just didn't feel right. So that was enough. And I've made some other really great business decisions and some bad ones. The bad ones always came about when I got involved in something that I didn't really know about.
Dude, but
it was greed. My greed was like, oh, this is you're going to make a lot of money from this, and I've lost every time, and all the money that has come to me has come from the simple things.
The stuff you know.
Yeah. I designed designing the Gem Ibanez.
Hmm.
That was a very innocent, simple changes in the guitar to suit a particular idiosyncrasies of my playing. I had no expectation. I didn't care or know if it was going to sell.
Right, right.
That was the biggest surprise of my entire life.
The gem, really, of everything.
Gem.
Interesting. But yeah, man, every time I've gotten involved with something I shouldn't have been, simply because I don't know it. It looks good. It smells good, but I don't know it. Never works.
Yeah, you really put your attention on something. And if you're not enjoying it, there's no use to do it.
100%.
Yeah. The money isn't going to as well for you then.
Yeah. It's almost like you're putting money to work for something that you're half-assed about because you're not 100% on it. Yeah. And biggest personal win?
Personal
win.
I'm not quite sure what that means. Sorry.
Whatever the personal decision you made, that was the best personal decision. You probably said it was marrying your wife or hooking up with your wife.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, I wonder if they're actually decisions that I'm consciously making, though. I don't know. Sometimes I when I look at all the seamless and fruitful things in my career, the decisions were almost automatic. It wasn't. They never seemed like I had to think about them. I mean, think about them like, well, should I do this or should I do that? There was always all the good. Maybe you recognize this, in if you look back at the same kinds of things in your life, the things that always seem to blossom into really fun, creative, and usually economically successful things were very simple. Like it didn't when I decided not to sign with that record label for Flexible, I didn't have to make the decision.
It was just like, no way, I'm not doing this.
No decision to be made. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. I totally know what you mean. Yeah. It's weird. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? The things that don't go right, you agonize over, and the things. But you know what? For me, that's part of what this whole thing. When I did with doing stress, I just decided I'm not doing this anymore. If it doesn't, I'm not. If I'm not embracing it, I can't do it. Yeah,
and it's such a freedom, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is.
You're free when you just not to buy into stress anymore.
Yeah, it was. It was. I wish I'd done it 30 years ago.
I know, right? You weren't ready then.
I wasn't ready. I know.
You needed to suffer a little more.
Yes, I right. I hadn't get the message yet.
Yeah.
Man, what's your favorite place you've traveled? You've been all over the world, literally.
Right.
Or places.
I love traveling. I love being in exotic places. I love being, just traveling. Probably, it's a tough one because every one of them holds a charm. But one of the stunners for me was Tahiti. You ever been there?
I have not.
Oh, I highly recommend it. It's a whole different brain pace, In
what way?
It's just slow. Takes a couple of days to get into the groove of it. You release psychological time, which is a real freedom because there's no, you're just enjoying, you're just enjoying being, and Tahiti was just something about it. It's not Hawaii, man. It's energy vibe.
Sorry, of course the guys are doing my freaking lawn here now. It's either that or, go out and wash my car and make it rain.
If this was tomorrow, they'd be doing it on my property right now.
So Tahiti. You know what though, man? When I go away anywhere, I decompress. I shut off. Maybe because I don't do it often enough, but whenever I go, like I'm going to New York tomorrow, I'm going to be like mentally free. Whenever I don't have to do a responsibility, I'm like, it's like an exhale for me, man. I really enjoy that, which is not often.
Yeah, that's something I'm working on too, because whenever I leave town to like on tour, I have to do a gig. There's sort of an awareness in me that I'm doing a gig. So there's this kind of like,
well, yeah, you're on business.
Yeah, I mean, you're very cautious about things. I'm watching my sleep. I'm watching where my hands are going. I'm watching cars more carefully. You know, all this kind of stuff, and I can't seem to kick that.
But you can't. But you're on business though. But you're about to. You have a responsibility to a lot of people in band, crew, audience. It's different than going away on vacation where it's like boom, shut off, shut down, good. It's totally different. No, I could understand when you're on tour, man. There's a lot of moving parts you are responsible for. So yeah, that's totally different than vacation, man.
Yeah, your radar is completely different.
Oh, hell yeah. Tell me about a specific experience that changed your life or changed the way you think about things.
Wow, there's so many.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. This may sound kind of bizarre. I had mentioned that I love to study spirituality and esoteric things, and I'm a meditator and all this stuff. But probably about 10 years ago, my friend turned me on to Eckhart Tolle, the spiritual teacher. Mm-hmm. And that had a profound impact on my life. I remember I put in a DVD of his. It was called The Illusion of Time. And, you know, you always hear the catchphrase is the only thing there is the now, you know, or the only time now, you know. And, you know, you have to live life now. And I kind of understood that, and, you know, I would repeat it and act as if I knew what that actually meant. But it wasn't until this one night I was sitting and watching Eckhart Tolle, where he was talking about the illusion of time and how in reality, the only thing that there is now, and that the only place that the past and the future actually exists is as a thought in your head. And I pondered this for a moment, and then it hit me. And I remember walking around the room in the now, you know, where all my attention was not in my head, but it was in the now. And that's the big difference between placating that concept and actually aligning with it. It's a game changer. And that's the answer.
He wrote that. His book was The Power of Now, I think. Correct? Yeah. Two more questions, man. This has been like, I could talk to you for hours. This has been really, really cool. Thank you so much, man. This is really interesting. Toughest decision you've ever had to make, or most difficult thing you've had to do?
It's hard to make a request like that because I have to look back at my whole life. The toughest decision I ever had to make?
Or most difficult thing you've had to do?
I just don't know. I mean, the decisions that have seemed so tough to make in the past do not seem like they're tough now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, just to bring it on a down to earth level, I had to. It's such a weird question. Okay, so I had finished touring. I had done with Dave Roth tour, 2 David Lee Roth tours, and a huge Whitesnake tour. And I just had a baby. And I had just finished Passion and Warfare, and it came out. And I was being urged to tour on that record. And I couldn't figure out how I was going to do a tour on that record because it was an instrumental record, and I wasn't comfortable fronting a band, you know. I liked being on the side and having a lead singer. And also, I had just toured like 4 years or something, you know. And I decided not to tour on Passion and Warfare. That was a tough decision.
And you stayed home with your newborn, your son.
Yes.
Yeah. Good for you, man. And last question, biggest change in your personality, Steve, over the last 10 years, and how much of that has been intentional and how much is just a part of aging?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's just aging that chills you out.
Were you ever hot-headed? You were never hot-headed. I couldn't see you as a...
Man, I was such a prick.
Really?
Yeah. I was kind of arrogant. You know, I was this really nice, innocent kind of person until the fame. And it's not even that I see myself as that famous. I mean, the music community is just one part of what goes on in the world, and the rock community is much smaller than that, and the guitar community is smaller than that, and the instrumental guitar community is smaller than that. You know? But when you're in it, and you're considered
at the top of the mountain,
like everything, you know. So, what was the question again?
The question was, biggest change in your personality. You were saying whether it was intentional or deliberate, and you were saying that, you chilled out a little bit, and you said you should be a bit of a prick.
The question is it age? Because,
so hold on one second. Let me pause right there on something you said. What was the dime that dropped that made you shift from your words, I was a bit of a prick, to filling yourself up more with love?
Yeah.
Putting that out there.
Yeah. The suffering that it brought.
Okay.
You know, there's two kinds of suffering. One is, we all know, is the physical kind. You know, you have a sickness, or you stub your toe, or you break something, or whatever. That's just physical pain.
Sure.
But the other kind of suffering is psychological. And this makes up most of the world's suffering, psychological suffering. And what psychological suffering consists of is the stories that you create in your head about things that are virtually purely fantasy. And this is what causes fear and stress and many other things. So, and we don't even know we're doing it. We create these stories that we believe, and then they become our reality. So for me, I had, been pretty simple, relatively innocent, kind of intense. And I went through that deep depression when I was 21, and I was climbing out of it kind of beautifully. And then all of a sudden I became famous, or in the field that I'm in.
Yeah, sure.
And it was interesting because I didn't pine after things like, sex or drugs or money. I liked money. I liked all those things, but I didn't really, they didn't rule me in a sense, Mm-hmm. But elusively, the ego came in the back door. And because when everybody's telling you you're great, even your peers and even your heroes, you're seeing it in the press, and you're making a lot of money, and you're on the cover of every magazine, and you're winning Grammys, and you're winning all of the awards multiple times, and even being retired from the awards because you won them too much. This has a tendency to, for me at least, not for everybody, to come in the back door, and you create an identity for yourself in your own head as being the great one or whatever. Okay, now this is always a recipe for disaster because it's all ego. And it's very few people can escape it. I usually point to, there's only one person I know that has been able to weather these kinds of things in a really down-to-earth way, and that's Satriani.
I was going to say something because when I talked to Joe, and I asked him, I said, you have been blown up in the media and been extremely famous for doing this thing. But you're also a human being, which means you got to deal with the bullshit of life. How do you not tie your daily, or how have you in the past not tied your daily emotional highs and lows to this thing that you've been blown up about? And he answered in such a way that I could see this just was a non-issue for him remotely.
Yeah. And I can attest to the fact that it is a non-issue for him.
Yeah.
Because he's always been solid and level.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize kind of what was happening to me, you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
you don't know.
Of course.
Yeah. And Joe actually helped set me straight.
That's great.
Because he doesn't mess around. You know, he'll give it to you straight.
That's wonderful, man. That's a friend. That's a friend.
Good friend. And so there was a period there where I was suffering because, like I say, nothing is ever enough. You never feel when you believe your happiness needs to be. You have to achieve all these things before you could be happy. You're going to be miserable for the rest of your life because you're always looking for more. So the biggest shift in my life came when I discovered Eckhart, really, and I started to realize the folly of this voice in my head that's creating all this suffering. I realized how I create my own reality. Everybody does.
Yeah.
It's an easy thing to say, and it's a very easy thing to argue about with others, because anybody that doesn't understand what that means just doesn't understand it. And they say, well, that's totally impossible. There's the world outside is the cause.
No, you write your own story and you write your own ending.
You write your own story, the end. And once I realized that, I realized that the quality of my life experience with others and with my work and my family and with everybody is based on one thing. And that is how much peace do I have within me.
Yeah.
So I've discovered that the most important thing is peace in your inside of you. That doesn't mean that you don't have to make hard decisions, but the hard decisions are easy. It doesn't mean that you're not going to run up against outrageous situations, or you're not going to have great loss in your life. All these things are just part of life.
Yeah.
But it's the way we perceive them that determines our state of mind. So this was the biggest shift for me. I realized on an intuitive level that I create my own reality, and everybody does. But knowing this is a great freedom, because
oh God, yeah,
because then you can take control of your life.
Yeah,
and that's real liberation. That's freedom. So that was the biggest shift, and really, I did a lot of soul searching and meditating, and it led up to the moment that I had found Eckhart and also a whole slew of other teachers. And then I went back and looked at some of the other stuff, and it was all there. I just didn't see it. You know, it was all saying the same thing. Any spiritual teaching that's worth its salt always points to you as the individual. Anything that points outside is good for some people where they're at the time, but it's not the ultimate.
Wow. Dude, thank you. That was really cool of you to share that. And,
I hope it helps.
And I'm really happy for you that you're seem like a fucking 1 million pound weight is removed from you, man.
Definitely hope for the planet.
Yeah, man. Well, you know, it takes a lifetime to do something, and it takes a minute to do something, sort of, you know? Yeah,
instant. Yeah. And I'm still work in progress.
Oh, man. Yeah, of course.
I'm not sitting here saying that I'm a Yoda or something like that.
We all are. Steve, let me just tell people about a few cool things you got. Honestly, man, thank you. This is so freaking cool. Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate the depth and sincerity of our conversation. Thank you very much, man. Okay, so first of all, Steve's got a very busy Instagram account, and you can connect with him on there. It's Steve Vai himself. He has a really cool, he's going to headlining the Monterey Jazz Festival coming up in June 6th. Are you going to can you get tickets through your website, or do you have to go to the Monterey Jazz Festival website?
I don't know.
Well, just go get them.
It's in Rio de Janeiro.
Okay. Well, just go get them and go to Rio. And and Steve has his camp, the Vai Academy camp. You want to talk about that, man? It's coming up in late July, and you can check that out on vai.com. Talk about that.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's the fifth one, and it's about 150 to 200 we call them campers, but it's just one luxury.
That's cool, man.
Place that we go. It's a mansion in Glen Cove. I've got some.
You're bringing it back home.
I'm bringing it back home right in our own backyard. And I've got some great guest clinicians that are kind of come and speak. Joe Satch is going to be there. Mm-hmm. And Devin Town, Pliny, a whole host of other people. And the focus this year is on signal path, because it can be kind of a mystery on how the signal, the integrity of your signal from your instrument, how it gets affected, how various orders of effects will change the way it sounds. We're going to have Matt Picone from Fractal there teaching. I mean, this guy is just a complete genius when it comes to, sound sculpting. And I jam with every student.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things, every night for about 3 or 4 hours.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and you don't even have to be an accomplished player at all. You could be a beginner, and I can make music with you.
There you go. So go to Vai.com. And this is 5th one, you said?
5th one, yeah.
Awesome. Vai Academy in Glen Cove. And also, you have a couple of cool new products. One of them is Piano Reductions Volume 2 that Mike Keneally talked about. But talk about that. Explain what that is.
Yeah, Mike Keneally did the first one. Outstanding. I had this idea to find a piano player that would be able to take a handful of my songs and do these reductions on the piano, so they would arrange it. And I was so fortunate because when I did this the first time, I think it was 2005, I was working with Mike Keneally, who's absolutely brilliant. He's so inspired and insightful. He captured all the little nuances of those special moments that I thought were personal to me. And he captured them on the piano. So I thought it would be a nice tradition to kind of keep this momentum going. So Mike and I were going to do another record like that, but he got busy touring and this, this kind of thing. But he had sent me some clips of a young Japanese girl that was playing some of my music on solo piano. And I was stunned, to see what she was doing. So I contacted her, and her name is Miho Arai. And she was living in Los Angeles. And I talked to her about doing this project, and she was really down for it. And she is just an amazing and incredible player, really quite beautiful virtuoso. So Miho and I would get together maybe once every 6 months and record a few songs when she was ready. And that went on until it was done. And then I edited it and released this new Piano Reductions Volume 2. And you got to check it out. On my Instagram, I did a post where I have a performance of that she did in the studio of one of the songs. And she's just phenomenal. Really, really quite an extraordinary player. And it's a beautiful record if you like solo piano music.
Awesome.
I like doing stuff like that,
Very cool. So Piano Reductions Volume 2, and Steve's got a new book out called Videology, Videology. What's that about?
Well, I always loved music theory, and I enjoyed teaching whenever I get a chance. And I always wanted to make a book that has all the theory in it that I understand, as far as building blocks, the basic building blocks for having a better understanding of the guitar, having a better understanding of music in general, the terminology of music, simple things that a lot of, like the finances, are intimidating to young artists. Music theory can be very intimidating to some people. So I wanted to demystify it and make this book. It's called Videology, Basic Music Theory for Guitar Players. And it basically checks all the boxes of any of the kind of music theory and terminology that you would need to know to have a good grounding in music theory. And the big surprise for me is how well it's selling. I mean, they're working on translating into like 6 different languages now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So it must be like very tangible and easy to digest.
I think so. I mean, probably to ask some of the people that have it, because I have a particular writing style, but I tried to make it comprehensive in a chronological order of learning, because so many times I would see these music all through my life, you got a music book here, music book there. It's missing some of the pieces here. This one has too much information I don't understand. How do I get to understand it? Where do I go? So I built this book based on how I think it would be the easiest way to learn in a chronological order, so you don't feel, excuse me, you don't feel overwhelmed, which leads to feeling unworthy or something, that you just can't pick it up, you can't grasp it, and then you feel inferior, So I tried to combat that with just creating a flow that compels you to want to keep going and learn more.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And what's anything coming up you got another album coming out, or you're working on now?
Yeah, I'm basically off the grid, and I'm working on a new record, and I'm really it's focused very heavily on the guitar. A lot of my past records are very they're dense and very compositional, maybe even progressive. But these are real, sort of more like my Alien Love Secrets record, where it's pretty stripped down.
Very cool, man.
Generation X record coming out.
When is that coming out?
I'm not exactly sure. I think June.
Very good.
Soon we'll make an announcement, but it is something else, I got to tell you. It is just one of the coolest guitar records ever. We did a tour of Asia. Unfortunately, we weren't doing Bohemian Rhapsody at the time, because when we did that on the last tour, it was pretty special. But we toured Asia, and I recorded 7 of the shows, and then I edited them, and we got this lovely record coming out.
That's great. And it'll be on your website. You'll make it. I'm assuming you'll put it on your Instagram, make an announcement when it's ready to drop.
Yeah.
Awesome. Dude, I can't thank you enough. Anything I forgot, or any final words of wisdom?
No, I think you...
You're wisdomed out. Hey, man, thank you for everything. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, man. You're doing great work here with this site.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for supporting it. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much to Steve Vai for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. Follow Steve on Instagram at Steve Vai himself. And make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.